Welcome to Loyola University New Orleans. I'm Tanya Tetlow, the president, and I want to introduce Sam Clifton, who's our ASL interpreter, whom one of you requested. And I want to say, as somebody who's a little bit deaf herself, that this world where you can't read lips behind masks is pretty hard, so my empathy for you. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to welcome the parents of existing Loyola students, and a special welcome to the parents of incoming Loyola first-year students. You know, this is that moment where you drop your child off at college is hard enough on a good day, and these are just ridiculously surreal times when all of that anxiety is through the roof. So I'm here to answer your questions. I'll start talking about a few things I imagine you're thinking through, but I want you to know that this is a community, as the existing Loyola parents can attest in that Facebook page, which I recommend to all of you, of incredible caring for students. That I've never, in the 2 years I've been here, I've never before been in a place where faculty are so obsessed with the opportunities of their students, with teaching every single one of them, with making sure that nothing derails their opportunities, and that they are cared for. And our staff are sort of take it so personally to be there for your children. And so they, all of them, have been working doubly hard, dealing with their own disruptions and sick family members and child care duties and all of the things that all of you are facing. We are too at Loyola, and we are so proud to do it for the cause of your students, and to make sure that they are safe, that they are cared for, that their educational opportunities in life are not disrupted by this pandemic, that we are determined not to let it win, and to do as much as we can safely in this new reality. So what we are not doing is returning to operations the way they were last February, which seems so long ago. This is not a world of crowds and density in the same way, but what we will be doing is to have the kind of measures and precautions on campus where even if a fellow student of your child has coronavirus, that they will not be passing it on to anyone in the classroom, that students will be safely 6 feet apart from each other, that they will wear masks constantly on campus, and my hope, make a big fashion exercise of that and a way of expressing themselves, that we are ensuring that reimagining student engagement where it's in smaller groups at safe distances or virtual, that we will not be having large events, and that we will be careful in how we organize dining and other sort of comings and goings to avoid being too close to each other. So it is this strange world where we have to find ways to create close-knit community, but at a distance of 6 feet. But that distance of 6 feet is a lot better than being entirely apart, and we are determined to find a way through innovation and creativity and hard work to make it work, because of all of the institutions and operations that American society works to restore. I think that education is right up there with grocery stores in importance. And so we are lucky compared to a lot of K through 12 schools making hard decisions right now, because we have this big campus, because we have the ability to spread out. We have put a lot of our classes online for two reasons. One is to protect faculty who are older or might have a health vulnerability themselves, but also to allow the other classes to spread out, and so that we can create that distance. Some of the courses will be in shifts where your student might go on Monday but not Wednesday and Friday and participate virtually those other days. And others will be small classes put into much bigger rooms. So we'll be abandoning those small classrooms or repurposing them for safe study areas. We're taking a lot of seating away from the dining hall, from the library, et cetera, so that we can have less density. And we're giving the option for families and students who understandably might be nervous for very particular reasons about coming back to the campus, that they can participate virtually, so that everyone has a choice that fits where they feel comfortable or what's safe given their particular level of risk. We are practiced in that, of thinking about everything from contagion to other kinds of dangers to young people. And so we're taking those skills and really kicking it up a notch. So let me answer your specific questions. I'm going to start with one that they put up on a sign for me. If my kid becomes sick, will a nurse or medical professional be visiting them to determine their condition and treatment? How will they get medications? We have a health clinic on campus run by Ochsner Health Systems. And we have nurse practitioners usually staff that health clinic, and they see in any normal year a great many student visits for everything from the flu to worse. And that clinic is meant to provide something akin to an urgent care center, right? If we have something more serious, we would transport a student to a doctor's office or to a hospital. So that clinic, we are increasing our staffing of that clinic. We also have telemedicine. We have several stations on our campus that allow students to speak to a doctor remotely and to take their temperature and do what they need to do to get diagnosis or a prescription. So all of those efforts will continue. And if a student is isolating in their room because they're awaiting testing, if they are isolating because they have symptoms in any way, which we're very much urging students, if they have any symptoms, to stay at home off campus or in their residence halls, that we will be checking in on them regularly, that the health clinic will be calling them every day to see how they're doing. I am happy to introduce two other guests today. We're joined by Dr. Kathy Baumgarten, who's the Director of Infectious Control and Prevention at Ochsner Health Systems, and Beth Ann Lambert, who's the Supervisor for Infectious Control. And Ochsner is our partners on all of this in running our health clinic and also in helping us do our planning. So we have been scouring over CDC and state and local guidelines and then applying them to our own systems and buildings and physical plant. And the Ochsner team has literally been walking our campus with us, thinking about everything from airflow to seating to how we direct traffic through hallways and elevators, and just doing extraordinary work to really help us make sure that we get it right. So let them say hello to you and describe the kind of work they've been doing with us.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight, and thank you for that kind introduction. My name is Catherine Baumgarten. I'm the Medical Director for Infection Control at Ochsner Health System, which is a large health system within Louisiana. And I'm a practicing infectious disease physician, but my primary role is also to prevent infections in hospitalized patients. And Beth Ann and myself have been working with specific to Ochsner and protecting our patients and employees from it since the beginning of the pandemic. And what we've been doing with Loyola and other schools is partnering with them in the hopes to mitigate and reduce the risk of infection in the environments in which we find ourselves. And so what we've done is we've selected a team of multi-specialty and multiple disciplines to walk through the campuses and see what we can do to help mitigate risks. Many of those have already been covered already in terms of social distancing, in terms of making sure that ventilation is adequate, in terms of making sure that the proper cleanliness is happening, that there are opportunities for hand hygiene and other methods to try to reduce risk associated with a different or a new environment. And with that, I'll also let Beth Ann introduce herself and speak to anything that she would like to.
Hi, I'm Beth Ann Lambert. I am an epidemiologist by background, but I've been in hospital infection control for the last 6 years, and I've had the honor of working with Dr. Baumgarten very, very closely over the last few months. As you can see, we are not 6 feet distanced, but we've also become basically household contacts at this point. It's felt like we've been locked in this room since March, so it's always nice to get out for visits like we have here at campus and others.
Thank you both so much, and I'll get your help with some of these questions that parents have for us. So the first one is, it seems that other schools may be testing every student when they arrive and then regularly afterwards. What is Loyola's plan? So our plan is to test students who are symptomatic, and then if we have a positive diagnosis, to test the students who've been in contact with that student. So if we had someone in a res hall, for example, we might test everyone on that hall, and we'll be able to do that at our health clinic with Ochsner. The question of whether to do huge amounts of baseline testing of a whole population of college students is one that there's a lot of back and forth about. The CDC is not recommending that universities do that. And at this particular moment, there is a lot of, I am also a parent. This is my 8-year-old, and since my husband's out of town, she's joining me, so you can say hi to everybody. And Lucy has promised that she's never going to leave me and go away to college, except maybe to come here to Loyola and just sit with me, right? Okay. So what do we do if you have the testing and it's a moment in time, and then it doesn't tell you very much about the next day. So I got tested recently because I was going to go be in contact with other people, and I felt really good about that negative test for about 2 days and realized it was totally irrelevant at that point. So we also are facing a moment increasingly in this country when that's moot, because there's not the availability of that level of testing. And so at a moment when there's scarcity, to use those tests that are needed for symptomatic people for baseline testing is not something that we can really do. So I asked Dr. Baumgarten if she has other thoughts on that point for us.
No, I think you summarized it perfectly. We are in a situation where we are having to be productive about testing and when and how we use it because of capacity. And so we are trying to make sure that we make those decisions wisely and judiciously. Like was mentioned, the test just tells you at one point in time whether or not there is virus in the nasal passages or in the oral cavity where the test is taken from. Once a person is exposed, you can develop virus in the system or symptoms within 14 days of that contact. So when you do the test, it is only showing you what that test or what that virus is doing at that one point in time. It doesn't mean that you can then not have to social distance or do the other things that are necessary to protect yourself or protect others. And so it is, sometimes we're concerned that there may be a false sense of security when somebody gets a negative test back and they think, oh, I'm good to go, I can do whatever I want. And that is not the case at all. And so we want to be sure that people understand that and know that, and don't think that a negative test is
Sign language.
go if been exposed. And doing frequent testing is also hard for the people that are having it done. You have to go get the test done, you have to get swabbed, you have to wait for results. So it's not without some difficulty that testing is done. And in people such as in nursing homes where we are required to do repeated testing, it's hard on them to get that test every week. So we have to take that into consideration as well. So we are testing anybody that has symptoms and then using those contacts if they have close contact to make sure that they're quarantined and making sure that they stay out of close contact with others in that environment.
Thank you to you. And the doctors are connecting with us via Skype, so we're doing the best we can on audio. So thank you for hanging in there. I just want to add to that, I do think that there's a real risk with the negative test, both that people think that somehow they're clear, but also that it means for a young person that they may have been worried about their behavior and risks that they've taken. and then they get a negative test, and that feels like validation that the risks they took were fine, right? That, oh, well, I didn't get COVID even though I went out with my friends and went to parties. And that then becomes affirmation that they can keep engaging in that behavior, which is not the message we want to send. So I think there is a real risk that the tiny benefit of baseline testing is overwhelmed by the message that we're sending, that somehow you don't have to keep doing all of those things. So another way of saying the same thing that Dr. Baumgarten was just saying. Do students who have hybrid classes have the option to not return to campus and take those classes online? Yes, basically. We are asking for students to check in with their department or their associate dean. I think we sent out those emails recently, just to make sure, because there are variations on the theme and a lot of complexity about how the courses work. But our whole point for this was to have faculty plan for the idea that they would teach in person at a safe distance, that they would also make it possible for students who have health vulnerabilities, who otherwise want to be away, to participate virtually. And also, if we have students who end up having to self-isolate for 2 weeks, that they can still participate in their classes. What are the cleaning plans for facilities? So Oshner has been helping us a lot with that. We are doing just a lot more cleaning, basically, and we're really focusing on areas like bathrooms, common areas, doorknobs, railings. The residence halls, especially the bathrooms that are shared, we will be cleaning fairly obsessively. And we will also have cleaning materials available in the classroom, where we're asking of folks to go ahead and help us spray down desks and do all that in between classes, because to bring in a crew in between every class wouldn't be realistic. So we'll all be doing a lot of that, and we'll have lots of hand sanitizer around as well. Will the wearing of masks be strictly enforced? Yes, basically, both for those of us who work there and for students. And I've made very clear, we've been doing a lot of training with faculty and staff, that what we do is to model that behavior for students. And so we need to be very strict with ourselves as well. We're thinking through how to do that from a disciplinary perspective, whether it's a series of warnings that escalate. We're also thinking through, a lot of it's got to be social norming campaign. It's persuading more than enforcing, but we'll do both. I think in general, when it comes to all of these rules, that we are you stealing my computer? That we are really about persuading, but I think that it will have 95% of students eagerly participating in the rules and caring about the greater good and how to keep the campus open. And they don't want the 5% who do otherwise to ruin it for them. And so we have to enforce those rules for that. So New Orleans right now, I can tell you, has a mandatory mask order generally, right? So it's not just us enforcing the rules, it's the city. And that New Orleans is a place where people do wear masks. It's a city that, because we were a hot spot early on, sadly, and we went through a lot, people are really humbled by this, and they take it very seriously. And as such, when you walk around the city, people are wearing masks, and you cannot go into any retail establishment without a mask. They won't let you in. And not that I've seen people try. And there is this sense of basic responsibility. I haven't been to many places where I've seen crowds. What steps are being taken in classrooms as far as distancing? So we will have 6 feet of distance between chairs in classrooms, which means if you're sitting there with 6 feet and a mask on, that you should not have, even if the person next to you ends up having COVID, that you should not be able to catch it from them. That what we want is, we are aware that students may engage with each other and not follow the rules off campus. So that, of course, we have that real possibility, but that campus is never, that we do everything we can to have campus not be a place where contagion is spread. And as such, we're working hard with student leaders about the social norming campaigns, about responsibility. We are changing the student conduct code to cover subjects that never used to cover, and really trying to get student ownership of all of this. So I have a question about dining. Well, the time of the buffet is entirely gone. We will have far more grab and go options, including the ability to order online so you can get the choice of what you want and then go pick it up. We do have seating in the Orleans room, but it's farther apart and less of it. We have ordered a lot more seating for outside. The good thing about our climate is while it's going to be hot at the beginning of the semester, we have the ability to be outside for most of the year, which really helps. And we're taking rooms that would normally be conference rooms or event spaces and making it possible for eating and studying and other things. How will you accommodate students who lip read? We are ordering masks that have clear covers for faculty who teach students who have hearing impairments and need to lip read, so that we will make that available. I am worried about that if all of the rest of the world have masks where their face is covered, that's just a problem in general for hearing impaired people we've been thinking a lot about. And so I'm hoping there will be more and more availability of those clear masks for us to use for that purpose. If a student in a class tests positive, is that close contact or not if they were 6 feet apart? So the rules, the CDC guidance is that to constitute exposure, where you would put somebody on your contact tracing list, it has to be less than 6 feet and more than 15 minutes, which means those fleeting sort of exchanges don't qualify. And if you are at least 6 feet apart, and then we would add on to that, also in our case wearing a mask, that would not constitute an exposure. So that's why we're working so hard on those classroom spaces and others. We also have lots of directional signage of which way you walk up and down the stairs. The elevators will have to be more sparse, so I told the students they'll all be getting into better shape. And we'll keep the elevators really for those who have the need to use them because of for physical reasons. How do they self-quarantine if they share a dorm room? We've put aside dozens of rooms that are sitting empty right now that we have not rented out to make space for that. So and we also have a lot more students in single rooms where they wouldn't have the need of that. And then if those were to fill up, we would go to local hotels for surge capacity. How will you handle music and other performance classes? Well, we spent a lot of time on that. We have a grand specialty in choral and opera music, which now seems so frightfully dangerous, right? Singing has become something that doesn't really work. Individual music classes will be basically, I think, almost all taught virtually for that reason. We didn't want to try to distinguish among the relative danger of different instruments, so they will be taught virtually. And some ensembles, not choirs, but will be taught where students will spread out in great big performance halls, basically at safe distances. Is there a chance of a mass move out like in March? Well, I have learned not to claim the ability to predict the future at this particular moment in time. We are determined to keep residence halls open if we hit a situation like we did in March, which we tried to initially, but in that original world where we were all adjusting and wrapping our minds around it, we weren't ready yet. We feel ready for that now. Obviously, there could be circumstances where government officials tell us we need to shut down in some more permanent way, but we would very much like to be in a situation where even if there's a reason, an outbreak in the city, or God forbid, within our campus, that what we do is to flip the switch and go virtual with learning for some stretch of time, and we have the ability to quickly do that and to come back, and that the residence halls would remain open. And that's for a host of reasons. Some of your students might well want to come home at that point to wait out that period. Others don't have an easy home to get to or an easy home to go to. International students in particular have a hard time with that. last March, we did keep many of those students on campus, and they made their way home when that was possible for them. But our plan really is to keep the residence halls open and to hunker down in place, basically, because now that we are not an isolated hotspot the way that New Orleans became in the spring, but it's something that's going on in almost every state in the country right now. The ability to travel and move around, we'd rather students stay with us unless they choose not to. What is the plan for contact tracing? Well, we are hiring a public health coordinator, interviewing this week, to work with us to design a thorough system for that. I mean, we have designed a system, but to really staff it and direct it. So we have both our health clinic staff, our student affairs staff, and we will be hiring student workers who give us surge capacity. So if we had to make a bunch of phone calls all at once, that we have the ability to do that. Those people will be carefully trained, and there's a lot of great Johns Hopkins free training to be certified as a contact tracer, and we'll make sure that they are well trained to do that. And so that is the goal, right, is that we carefully control any diagnosis, any infection we have within our community. Will the students who stay home and take classes remotely be included in student organizations and other friendship building activities? Absolutely. I have been charging our student affairs folks to be creative, and they really are extraordinary about how to be thoughtful about virtual and live. Even the communities we have on campus will in some ways have to do some of their activities virtually, just because we are under state and local guidance about how big a gathering we can have. No more than 50 outside, no more than 25 inside. That doesn't apply to classes, but applies to, you know, student organization getting together. And so they are being really creative about that. And as such, it will be much easier than under normal circumstances for students who are participating virtual to also be part of Greek Life or other student organizations. We're thinking a lot about leadership training and activities. I've been really impressed with what they've come up with. What is the tipping point for closing down? Well, I find this planning sort of like planning in advance when and how and whether you evacuate for a hurricane. There's so many variations on the theme of what could come our way that it becomes very difficult to predict that. We are having meetings with Ochsner and our medical friends and with the city health director tomorrow, actually, to really think through that. And they don't have clear guidance for us of what that looks like, because it depends on whether it's an issue for the region or an issue for the campus. I can tell you that if we have a campus outbreak that we need to get back into control, that we would quickly go virtual and focus on that, and make sure that we take the few weeks to get through that. And then so the question is not shut down or not, it's go virtual or not. And then back to the question of the residence halls remaining open. But there's no world where we stop doing what we're doing, and that's what we proved in March. This is a very nimble, quick to react group. We are, in a strange way, very well prepared from what many of us went through in Katrina. We have been drilling for hurricanes. We've been ready for disruption anyway, and we're a pretty resilient bunch. So that transition happened fairly remarkably seamlessly. It wasn't without some fumbles here and there, but the faculty did an extraordinary job, as did the staff. So we're ready, basically, to be flexible, to take whatever comes at us. Are you looking to go back to full-time classes in the spring? I certainly hope so, but we are entirely dependent on the conditions that we all face together. We want to have as much normalcy as we can, as quickly as we can, but we'll also be, like our government officials here, very data-driven and balance what we want to give to the students, what we want them to experience, with what will keep them and us safe. Will there be a curfew at the dorm? I may ask for my Res Life director to email me the answer to that. I know that we are not having allowing visits between res halls because we want to sort of contain contagion. No, it looks like we do not have a curfew. We are doing temperature checks for the residence halls once a day. We are thinking through a lot about we're thinking about temperature checks in the residence halls. We're trying to get information about how effective that is as a measure of symptoms, because as we've all sort of learned now, it's one of about 15 different symptoms. What we are using is a symptom checker app, and we're working on the right one and on beta testing it on ourselves to make sure it works. Where we'll make sure students take their temperature every day, be very clear to them what it means to report a symptom, that we will be in quick touch with them, that we will be, if they have symptoms, checking them quickly and getting the results as quickly as possible, and encouraging them to be very honest with us. Have you considered making campus a bubble? Well, there's part of me that would love to do that. I heard a report early on of Chinese higher education where they have literally banned students from leaving campus. I don't think that's viable in American higher education, in part because most of our students live off campus and we have a lot of commuter students, and so we have no ability to really sort of put a bubble around our campus. So what we work very hard to do is to make sure that campus is not a place where the contagion happens, and that it is, by educating the students and bringing them together on our campus, that we are not increasing the risk that already exists, that we're doing what we do without increased risk. We are getting questions about move-in day that are very specific. So I'm going to ask Amy Boyle, if she's listening, to answer some of those questions in the chat for you very particularly. And we're thinking through all of the logistics of that, of getting you in at particular times. So I can tell you generally that the city of New Orleans at this moment, what it's like. Restaurants are open with careful occupancy requirements. Bars are, we're open with 25% occupancy, but now have been shut down again, other than takeout. We've encouraged city officials to continue to tightly regulate bars as a way for us to help control our own risk with young people. In general, people are being very good about safety and masks and such. I want to address, one of you has asked about upper class and graduate housing for Res Life. We early on, and we're having to make decisions with constantly changing circumstances, wanted to take out some of the density from the residence halls for safety's sake. And so we asked of graduate and law students, upper class students, to go ahead and move off campus with our empathy and help. And so many of them did that. We had an appeal process. Some of them were allowed to stay for very specific reasons of hardship. We then contracted with the Alder Hotel, which is not very far from us, and a really great little hotel next to Baptist Hospital. We still have that availability in place where students can live at the Alder. We've had some students withdraw from Residence Life because they're making the decision to participate in school virtually, so we've had a trickle of that. And as such, we've been able to welcome back some of those upper class students who have not yet signed leases that can come back into the residence halls. So it's been a lot of back and forth, and we are so sorry for the disruption to people and the changing of it. It's been about predicting what level of density provides the most safety versus the desire to have students on campus and the community and safety that that provides them, of also predicting how many students would opt into residence life. And so we have sent your students a poll very recently and copied you on that, but we're eager to get the results of knowing exactly what we're working with. Is the emergency system set up to notify us in the event of a spike? Students will be notified via text for imminent emergency, and we'll be tracking the numbers on our website. So I don't think it's a point where we're going to send out constant sort of email or text alerts when there's a case. We'll do contact tracing, contacting anyone who needs to know that very particularly, but our plan is to, on the website, have kind of ongoing notice of where we are. Is tuition changing? It is not. I'm glad you asked this, because I think for a lot of universities whose effective tuition, meaning not just what the listed tuition is, but what they actually charge after they give financial aid and merit scholarships and all of that, is a lot higher than online tuition. It's a really tough set of discussions that they're having. For us, our highest priority in our budget has always been financial aid. We give extraordinary amounts of financial aid to make Loyola as affordable as possible, to keep excellence by being really frugal. You not see any lazy rivers on this campus, but providing that excellence as affordably as possible for you. And so as such, what most of you pay, what you pay on average in effective tuition is the same as our online tuition. It's not higher, and I'd say about half of you pay less than that. So before you ask for online tuition, you might want to check, because in some ways that might mean paying more, not less, than what you're paying right now. So we are very proud of being so affordable already that doesn't really create a differential. How will you stop students from gathering in each other's dorms and not having space between them? Well, our RAs and our residence life staff are going to be doing lots of duty with that. We won't have absolute control, but it will be part of the student conduct code to follow the rules, and we will be enforcing those rules. And so we have eyes on because of residence advisors, and especially in the residence halls off campus, it's tougher for us, obviously. We will be enforcing those rules. So if a student decides to stay home in the fall, will a dorm room be available in the spring? Yes, actually, we will have more availability in the spring, and we'll send out applications in October and let you know how things are looking. But our plan is, if things are better, that we can start to do more to fill up those resident halls. And we'll have a lot more experience to go on at that point too. And whether we need to have so many rooms empty for quarantine purposes, or whether we're ready to go ahead and fill those. So we're looking through the questions now. I want to say that you all are always our partners in this, but it's never been more true than now. We need your help, and I understand that's not always easy or viable, but to help your students understand how much of our success really depends on them. And I think that's a couple of different kinds of arguments. You know, the argument that I don't think works very well is for them to feel vulnerable, because none of us felt that vulnerable at their age. We were immortal, right? And we didn't feel that sense of risk in the same way. That's typical when at their age, the age that most of them are. But what does work, and what will be pushing very hard, are two questions. One is just appealing to their values and their desire to help each other. And the kinds of students who choose Loyola, the kind of community we create, those are really good arguments to make. And we build on this culture of faith and values and of caring about each other that is very real. It is so palpable among our student body. And so I have a lot of faith in that, and we'll keep talking in that language. You know, I told them early on in March, you've never had a bigger reminder that what you do affects others, but that is always true. It's always been true. So we are having this remarkable teachable moment, as much as I wouldn't wish it on anybody else, but you know, that where we really want them to learn and grow. And the second argument is self-interest, that if we want the campus to be able to function and to be open in a way that's not normal reality, but much better than not having it be open, we need their help with that. How can it be that online is cheaper than residential? It's cheaper in the sense that online education does not generally come with financial aid and scholarships. So the online tuition is higher than what most of you pay after financial aid and scholarships, right? We've had students send in some petitions, and we've looked up some of their names, and most of them on more financial aid, that literally they pay less on their tuition bill than they would if they were in an online program. That's what I mean about that. Question about Tulane and dining there in particular. Both campuses have decided, we for the incoming families, we usually have reciprocity with meal plans with Tulane next door, because we both use Sodexo, the same vendor for food, so it's easy to do that. Right now we're both feeling like we need to focus on our own campuses and our own sets of risk, and not have a lot of crossing back and forth between the two campuses. And so we are not going to have that dining reciprocity. I want to worry about my own students. I don't want to worry about the Tulane students and how disciplined they may or may not be. And so we'll also be having our own shuttle service and not sharing with them as well. Okay, next question. When kids go to a COVID isolated room, will it have sheets, or should students pack a bag? They should bring a bag with them, and we'll have basic medical supplies, but they may want to bring those too. It will have sheets, though. We will have linens for those rooms. We're also really thinking through how to constantly check in with students. We had some students who had to self-isolate in the spring, and we ended up bringing them care packages and calling them all the time and making sure they were okay. Will students with food allergies be accommodated? Absolutely. We always do that, and we have lots of options available. We're very used to, I mean, you imagine with almost 5,000 students, we've thought through those issues for a long time. Will my child lose financial aid if they get COVID? No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. We bend over backwards to work with, is this going on too long, right?
No.
No, okay.
I will not get COVID.
You will not get COVID, that's right. We bend over backwards for our students under normal circumstances. We're going to doubly do it now. No, we would never do that. Okay. I know that my staff are answering a lot of your questions on the chat, and very happy about that. Know that you can reach them at any time, that they will be incredibly responsive to you. There are so many questions, and I'm sure for all of us, we're feeling levels of anxiety and eagerness to get back to normal that change, that vary, and for me kind of go back and forth every hour. I think this is a period, as I tell the students, that they'll be telling their grandkids about, and I want them to have stories they'll be proud of. I think this is a time of great juggling of family and work, and of figuring out how to deal with unbelievable uncertainty and change, which none of us love. And I'm just so grateful to you for trusting us with your children, for what your children are like when they get here. They are just the best, and we are so in love with them. I can't even describe to you how much we brag about them and how wonderful they are. For the incoming families, the Facebook Parents page is a pretty great community that is not ours, it's yours. And I think you can get lots of information from parents about what their experience has been. But we are going to make this work. We're going to plan and prepare and do everything we can. So we will review the questions that you sent tonight, and that will help make sure that we continue to communicate well with you and cover all of those topics, and email you later on anything we might have missed. So thank you very much. Good night.